Hey everyone, so we're starting to get some early indications about next year's Social Security cost of living adjustment, which we just generally refer to as the COLA. Now the annual COLA is normally announced in mid-October, and there are some who are not expecting benefits to increase at all next year. And if you look at the data, they may be right. So I wanted to take just a minute and cover how the Social Security Administration calculates these annual cost of living adjustments, and that way you'll know how to look at the data for yourself, and you won't be surprised when the announcement comes out. But first, if you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit that notifications bell every year when they announce the annual changes to Social Security, one of them being the cost of living adjustment. I make a video and I cover all of them, and if you're subscribed, you won't miss it. Also, be sure to pick up a copy of my Social Security cheat sheet. I know Social Security can be confusing, but this cheat sheet is like taking the most important parts of the 100,000-page Social Security website and condensing it down to just one page. There will be a link in the description below where you can pick up your free copy. So let's dive into the Social Security cost of living adjustments and show you what the increase is based on and how they calculate this every year. And then I also want to talk a little bit about the application of the cost of living adjustment. But first, let's take a quick look at the history of how Social Security has been adjusted in the past. It hasn't always been a clear-cut process like it is now, where we can just look at it on a year-to-year basis and expect either an increase or no increase. Prior to 1975, the Social Security cost of living adjustments were all set by Congress, and those were not that dependable, to say the least. For the first decade Social Security was in existence, there were no increases to benefits. And then in 1950, benefits increased by 77%. Then in 1952, they went up an additional 12.5%. And in 1954, another 13%. Now after that, things slowed down a little bit, and benefits were only increased 8 times between 1954 and 1975. And that was when a new law took effect mandating that Social Security would be pegged to the annual changes in the CPI, or Consumer Price Index. Now, this index is tracked by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is part of the Department of Labor. Specifically, they use a measurement called the CPI-W, which is the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. Now, this index tracks the pricing of a basket of things that consumers routinely buy. Now, if you really want to know what items they've tracked, I put a link in the description that gets into the nitty-gritty of all these different items they watch and what weighting each of those items has in the index, which it does change a little bit. So, for example, the food and beverage category makes up nearly 15% of the total CPI-W. But within that category, it gets broken out into subcategories like pork, which is 0.31% of the index, and then subcategories like pork chops, which makes up 0.048% of the index. Anyway, some interesting data for the curious if you want to check that out. Again, link in the description. So every month, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases the Consumer Price Index for the prior month, and it's usually on about the middle of the month when that's released. So June's data will be released around July 15th. Now, it seems to make sense that they would simply take the aggregate value of the index on a year-over-year basis to see how much inflation has changed from one year to the next, but they don't. Instead, they only use the data from the third quarter of the year. So that's the CPI reading from July, August, and September, and then they compare that to the prior year's July, August, and September. The way they do this comparison is simply to add up the data for the third quarter of the prior year, then the data of the third quarter of the current year, and then just compare the percentage difference between the numbers. And that's really all there is to it. So if you want to get a head start on figuring out what the annual cost of living adjustment is going to be, you can start watching this number in August when July's CPI is released. And if you look in the description of this video, you'll see a link to the Bureau of Labor Statistics tables where those numbers are released. Just go down to the second set of tables, and it says there at the top that it's for the CPI-W. Now, those increases are applied every December, which is payable in the check you receive in January. Now, a lot of people are under the impression that your future benefit is increased by the annual cost of living increases, and that's only true for certain people. These cost of living adjustments only apply at your benchmark year and beyond. Now, that benchmark year is a Social Security term that simply means the year you turn 62, the year you become disabled if under 62, or the year you die, which is then used for calculating your survivor benefits. Prior to the benchmark year, your benefits are increased based on changes to national wages. So for most people who are just filing for a retirement benefit, the cost of living adjustment doesn't even matter that much until age 62. The other notable thing about how the cost of living adjustments are applied that doesn't make much of a difference, but still matters to those of you who are trying to duplicate the exact process, is that your primary insurance amount, or your PIA, that's typically your full retirement age benefit amount, is increased for inflation, that CPI is added, and then reduced or increased by the factors for filing early or later. So it's the PIA that's changed for the COLA. So that's the rundown of how the Social Security cost of living adjustment is calculated and applied. I hope this video was useful, and I hope you find my cheat sheet useful as well. Be sure to find the link to your free copy in the description below. Thank you for watching, and have a fantastic day.